Hello, everybody, and welcome to AWE, Aging with Expectation. Today's topic is on finding joy, and I'm so privileged to be here with Reverend Dr. Stephen Koski from Oregon. So welcome, Stephen, and I'm Professor Kathryn von Treuer from the Cairnmillar Institute here in Melbourne. And I'd like to start today's session or discussion really acknowledging country. The Cairnmillar Institute acknowledges the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting. We pay our respects to elders past and present and the Aboriginal elders of the communities who may be here today and listening in. We extend this respect to Indigenous peoples from around the world and to any First Nations people who come across the material that we discuss today. Over to you, Stephen.
Well, I'm delighted to be here with you again and to have this conversation. And just to take a moment to honor Dr. Francis Macnab, who really kind of initiated these programs. And we just recently marked the 1-year anniversary of Dr. Macnab's death. And so I want to take a moment to just recognize the impact of his life and the legacy that he has left us. And today's topic, finding joy, just seems to me so appropriate to recognize Francis, who always said, make sure that you add as much color to your life as you possibly can. And one of the things Francis really appreciated was poetry. So I want to begin and to honor Francis by just reading a short poem by a poet by the name of Mary Oliver. And the poem is called Don't Hesitate, where it says, if you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. That sometimes something happens better than all the riches or power in the world. It could be anything, but very likely you notice it in the instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of joy's plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. Well, I certainly hope Francis would have appreciated that poem, and I will turn it over to you, Kathryn, to lead our discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. And what a pertinent poem. I think there's some very wise takeaways from that. I wanted to start today just talking about more recently in the media and certainly in journal articles, there's been a lot talked about in terms of feeling burnout and stress. It's emerged again as something really popular, I think perhaps even post-COVID, where people were on a little bit or felt like they were on a little bit of a treadmill of life. And it reminded me of a client that I saw once, let's call him Dan, and he was seeing me about stress and burnout. And throughout the sessions, we talked and we unpacked his story and what was causing some of that stress and sense of burnout for him. But one session, I decided to take a bit of a different tact, because how can we counteract burnout and stress? And I asked him, what brings you joy? What do you do that brings you joy in your life? And he thought about it. Then he thought about it. And he had to think about it some more. And then he responded eventually by saying, I really enjoy fishing. Yeah, I like fishing, he told me. And I said, what is it about fishing that you like so much? And he said, and he just painted this beautiful picture of being out on the boat and being with nature and hearing the waves lap against the boat, and catching fish was a highlight, of course, but it didn't have to be for him to really enjoy being out fishing. He said that he would feel a sense of connection and joy and and he just loved to fish. And so then I asked him, well, when did you last go fishing, Dad? And Dad thought about it and then thought about it some more and then said 7 years ago. So it's been a long time since Dan had purposely done something that helps him feel joyful and brings him joy.
Yeah.
So what's happening here with Dan? Somewhere, he's lost the habit, or awareness of purposefully feeling joy. It's understandable with a busy life, focusing on others, on family, on neighbours, on activities, that you forget a little bit about the habits and losing the habit of finding joy and being joyful and allowing yourself to be joyful. Did you want to add to that at all, Stephen?
Yeah, I think sometimes, what a great story. I think sometimes we think stress or burnout is mostly related to having too much to do or the challenges being too difficult, which are a challenge. But oftentimes, I think stress and burnout is the result of not doing enough of the things that bring life to us, that spark life in us, that bring joy to us. The term I love this term where joy is really the oxygen we need when the air is really thin because of all of the challenging things in life. Joy is the oxygen we need to kind of face the hard things, where I think the best time to try to find ways to celebrate what's right in our life is when everything feels wrong. There's a great quote by Howard Thurman where he said, "Don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive. Because what the world needs is more and more people who have come alive."
Yeah, so well said. So well said. So, and it highlights sort of the emotional part and the healing part of joy, doesn't it? And I think there's several reasons, why we do want to feel joyful. And there's lots of actually physiological, psychological benefits, as you're just highlighting, Stephen, and also emotional connection that also helps our health benefits. So, engaging in little micro joys, they don't have to be big. It could be just enjoying and relishing a cup of coffee or enjoying a funny video. Joyful people have lower risks of heart attacks, high blood pressure, and they have boosts their immune system, lower cholesterol levels. The lower immune system helps us fight stress and reduces pain, potentially leading to longer life. So there's lots of really good physiological reasons why we want to feel joyful. The psychological benefits, as Stephen was just talking about, it can counteract and help mitigate those feelings of burnout and stress. Feeling joyful broadens our perspective. Joy helps broaden our mind's perspective. Unlike negative emotions like anxiety and depression that constrict our feelings and perspective, it has ability to open up our perspective when we're feeling joyful and more open. It also helps with what we call self-regulation, or regulating about our experiences that we might have. Joy contributes to a better regulation. So it's strengthening how we feel about our emotions and how we're feeling psychologically. And then there's also emotional connection, also as another important health benefit, where joy creates that positive excitement that uplifts and expands us. It's an indication that we're in touch with our true selves, and emotions serve to attract our attention, prompt discussions, and fuel action. And we do that when we're working with each other, and sharing the joy with other people can be so important and really benefit our health. So there's lots of good reasons to be wanting to feel joyful, and more often. So joy can bring this temporary feeling of happiness and can also contribute to our well-being in the long term. So we embrace those moments of feeling joyful. And I think the gold in this is that we can actually build a habit of feeling joyful. So Dan's role now and job is to start thinking, how do I start to build in this habit of feeling more joyful?
Right.
Did you want to add something there, Steve?
Yeah, I remember about 5 years ago, my wife was seriously ill and spent 6 weeks in the ICU. And I remember at one stage that I would sit in the corner of that room every day from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I remember one day where the nurse kind of noticed that I was depleted. I was emotionally, spiritually, physically depleted, worn out, worried, stressed. And she said, your wife right now doesn't need your worried energy. She doesn't need your anxious energy. She doesn't need your worn out energy. She needs the fullness of your being. So here's what I want you to do, she said. I want you to go and listen to your favorite music. I want you to take your shoes and socks off and just feel the grass underneath your feet. I want you to think about what would be the one meal that you would really savor, that you would just your favorite food that you love. And she kind of just really challenged me to think about, well, what are those things that bring you joy? And she said, because what this situation needs and what your wife needs right now, she needs your positivity. She needs your energy. She needs your love. She needs your joy. That's what's going to be healing in this situation. And that was so transformational for me, because often we think of, well, I'll get to the joy bit when the problem's solved. I'll get to the joy bit when the challenge is overcome. I'll get to the joy bit when life is better. When in actual fact, I mean, that is our life. I mean, life never goes the way we want it to go. Life is never perfect. There are always challenges. There's always stress. There's always things to worry about. And the reality is, when we take time for those habits that you just mentioned, when we take time to kind of cultivate those things that really do kind of spark some life in us, we then bring a different energy to the challenges. We bring different resources to the challenge. We bring better clarity to the challenges. So again, it's back to that. Maybe the best time to celebrate what's right are those times when everything does feel wrong.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, and it's habit forming, which means whatever's going on in your life, you want to cultivate and also nurture that joy. And while you might be distracted on really big picture transitions and things going on in your life, it's still important to nurture those feelings of joy, because that also can help others as well as help yourself and have those benefits. So cultivating, nurturing joy, bringing it into a habit is really important. And what I like about your examples there, Stephen, is that they're easy. They're not a really huge task that you have to do to bring in joy. It's not like you have to sit under a pyramid for an hour every day to find joy. They're the little things that you do along the way. But I think, breaking habits, it's that notion of, every hour on the hour, do something small that helps, and keep that joy going throughout the day as much as you can and nurture that.
I wonder too whether sometimes part of the habit is paying attention. I wonder whether part of joy is recognizing that maybe it's not something that we have to create, that we have to somehow muster up or pull out of thin air. And sometimes maybe the habit is just paying attention. Maybe the habit is noticing that flower,
Mm.
that's growing in the crack of the sidewalk.
Yeah.
Maybe the habit is just taking time to really pay attention to the smell of the freshly brewed coffee, that's in your hand. Or maybe the habit is just looking around and noticing when and where people are kind to each other, and just realizing there's so much that's harsh in this world. Maybe it's the habit of trying to pay attention to the things that are soft and hopeful, that are around us that we tend not to see.
Mm. So it really highlights the fact that joy doesn't necessarily happen to us, but it's a state of mind that we choose to be joyful and being aware and conscious and present. I remember reading about someone who talked about that every night when their son went to sleep, they went into their bedroom and they just sat there for a few minutes and just listened to them breathe. It's as simple as that, and just felt connected to their son at that point, and felt joyful about the fact of, you know, that they had a son and where they were in life, and that was something that brought them joy. So so very much about being aware of the things around you is a really good point. So finding purpose becomes important. You know, appreciation develops the capacity, I guess, to develop purpose, and appreciation involves a certain positive focus and perception around the world, and where we might override our tendencies to judge or rely on automatic and familiar ways. So we're breaking habits, you know, what has been familiar, we want to break that, just punctuate it with little moments of joy along the way can become really important. So I think this quote really highlights that the real joy in life comes from finding your true purpose and aligning it to what you do every single day, which is also reinforcing what Stephen was just talking about. And having that purpose as a human being in our very simple interactions that we have with each other is often like gold. So being mindful is really important, which really touches on those, you know, about awareness that you were speaking about, Stephen. You know, so many of us live for tomorrow, and we're so busy planning for what's happening tomorrow. And we live in our lives and think about the what ifs and if onlys and maybe, you know, maybe whens, without being present in the actual moment. It only takes a small step to be mindful, and that wholeheartedness to enjoy, you know, a piece of music, notice the stars in the sky, notice the cracks in the sidewalk as you're walking around, and just feeling present and mindful in the moment. And isn't it when we can be mindful ourselves, we can be more mindful and present with other people in our lives as well. So meditation is certainly something that can help. But meditation, as I said earlier, it doesn't have to mean that you're sitting under a pyramid for an hour. It can just be very simple, just breathing and just being aware of the breath, just breathing in and expanding your lungs, and your lungs collapsing, and just being aware of breathing and how important it is to our own life. And we can be mindful of where we're sitting and parts of our body that's touching the ground and being connected to the ground and the earth. These simple little moments build, and certainly during the course of the day, I often think of it as a little bit like a spiral sometimes, that you can wake up and then things happen during the day and you can start getting more and more stressed. And a way to break that cycle or to break that spiral is to start bringing in these little moments of mindfulness and reminding yourself about purpose, that can really help. Did you have anything to add there, Stephen?
Yeah, you mentioned purpose, and I think just being mindful of your purpose, that what is your why? I mean, a question I love to ask people is, you know, why did you get up this morning? And more often than not, the response I get is, well, I had to go to the bathroom. Or I had to. And I think we all need something a little more inspirational than our bladder to to give us a sense of purpose. So, you know, what is your why? There's that beautiful quote that says the person who actually has a why, the person who's mindful of their why, can overcome any what or how. I mean, that sense of purpose, I think, is so important. And it doesn't have to be, you know, it doesn't have to be life-changing. I mean, it just that sense of feeling useful, that sense of feeling like your life matters, that sense of you have something to do today. There's so much about life that we can't control, but what we can always do is contribute to life. So if we can make that shift, because sometimes the burnout and the stress is because our energy, what we're mindful on is the things we can't control. If we can shift that to, well, where can I contribute? What can I contribute? There's a beautiful quote by George Bernard Shaw, who said, the true joy in life is being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a good one. Being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. He goes on to say, I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community. And as long as I live, it's my privilege to do for the community what I can. And he says, I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more purpose I feel, the more I live and come alive. He said, life is no brief candle to me. It's a sort of splendid torch, which I have hold of for just this short moment in time. And I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before I hand it on to the next generation. And I think that's such a beautiful quote. And sometimes I just read recently that gave me so much hope, that said the decade where you are the most productive is between 60 and 70. And then I read that the second decade, the second most productive decade, is 70 to 80. So in some ways, it's as we age and get older, some of the more trivial things in life that kind of weigh us down fall away. And there's an opportunity to devote our lives, to devote our energy, to devote our mindfulness to those things that really matter. And those things that do bring us joy, those things that contribute to the lives of others.
Yeah, lovely, Stephen. And I think that's a really beautiful segue into my next point, which is around feeling gratitude and practicing gratitude. And so while we're saying it's important to feel joyful for yourself, and as Stephen said earlier, it's the oxygen that keeps us going, but it's also important to be kind to others and to feel gratitude around you, because that benefits and brings joy inherently into our lives. And even doing simple things, holding a door open for somebody, it's such a simple thing to do, and volunteering can be helpful. So take a moment each day just to reflect on what you're grateful for. I know we have family dinners every now and again, and I've got quite a few of our family members are quite extroverted, so the table can get really noisy. And I just like to sit back, and sometimes I'm sitting there and I've just got a big grin on my face because I'm just watching the family, and I'm part of it, but watching and just really enjoying and treasuring those moments. And I'm not too worried about how long something's been in the oven or who's finishing up their dinner first or anything like that. It's just about being connected and together, and I'm very grateful for that. So connecting with loved ones, people who bring that positivity into your life, can be really important, and is important in terms of building our sense of joy in the world. And, simple things like sharing a meal, having a coffee with someone can be so fundamental to our feeling of well-being and joy. So engaging with activities that you love is also another important part of feeling joyful. For example, go fishing. If you like fishing like Dan, go fishing. Or rediscover a hobby that you used to enjoy when you were much younger, that you just haven't had time during your life or your 60s and 70s when you're busiest. And, think about what you enjoyed doing earlier and perhaps revisit those things. Dancing, gardening, all the simple things, playing an instrument. Celebrating small wins is also important. And I'm really enraptured with the idea of small things in life and noticing them and celebrating them. Acknowledge achievements. They might be small things. Even remembering everyone's name in the room, it's an achievement. It's, it helps cultivate that openness and curiosity as well, when we're, you know, open and feeling joyful. So it's such an important state of being. So I've got another quote here around that there are souls in the world who have the gift of finding joy everywhere and leaving it behind them where they go. So when you have joy, you can share that joy and bring other people joy, and it can be infectious and it can build. And so I think, you know, it's something that can be shared, but we need to sort of really feel that joy and work on our own joy to be able to share it first. And in the sense that I think being joyful also has to be balanced with having that sense of authenticity as well. I remember I used to work in a commercial workplace where you weren't allowed to be anything but joyful. And if you weren't happy, fabulous, and wonderful, there was something wrong with you. So I changed workplaces and I went to another workplace. And I recall returning up to work every day, and the boss and myself tended to get there really early. So we were the first there. Every morning I would walk past his office and he would yell out, "Hello, Kathryn," and I'd say, "Hi," back, and he'd say, "How are you going?" And I'd say, "I'm wonderful," or I'd say, "I'm fabulous." And then one day he pulled me back and he said, "Can you just come back into my office for a minute?" And I said, "Okay." I came back in and he said, "You know, in the mornings, every morning I ask you how you're going, and every morning you tell me you're wonderful and you're fabulous." And I said, "Yes." And I'm thinking, what's wrong with that? And he said, "I just want you to know that you don't have to be fabulous and wonderful every day. And it's quite okay to tell me that you're not feeling fabulous and wonderful." And I was sort of a bit taken aback because I was out of the habit of saying how I really felt. And I think in my reflections was that he was asking me to be authentic, and he was asking me to say how I really felt, and it was quite okay and safe with him to tell me how I really felt for the day. And I think it also brings home the message too, Stephen, that in balance, we don't have to be joyful all of the time to be successful. Our small wins, our small things we do, small moments of joy is enough. And it's good to celebrate those small wins of feeling joyful. What do you think about that, Stephen?
I really love that. And I love the authenticity and the honesty of that. I have a friend who's living with cancer and probably will not survive this. And he was sharing with me that he had such a balance. He said, "I have these moments where I just allow myself despair. But I also recognize that my cancer doesn't make sunsets any less beautiful. So I also have those moments where I'm sitting with my partner and we're just enjoying a sunset together. And I'm overcome with a sense of gratitude for that moment." And to me, that's such just a beautiful kind of invitation for all of us. As I like to say, I think part of the challenge is to hold our grief in one hand. And we all have some grief. We all are holding some burden. We're all carrying some weight. So to hold our grief in one hand and to hold gratitude or joy in the other hand. And because if we squeeze our grief too tightly, we will fall into despair. If we squeeze our gratitude or joy too tightly, we'll become kind of Pollyanna and not real, not authentic. So it's the balance of holding them together and allowing both our grief and our gratitude and joy to stretch our hearts and speak to each other. So I think that's really beautiful. It's not joy that makes us grateful. It's gratitude, I think, that invites us to be joyful.
Yeah, thank you for that, Stephen. I think this is a really nice note to end on, because that example you've provided sort of summarizes all the things we've talked about purpose, the small things, being mindful, and a really lovely example. So thank you for that. And thank you to everybody who listened in today. I hope you found today's session really useful. How did we do? We always want to know how we're going, so we love your feedback. So please feel welcome that you can contact us, both Stephen and myself, on the emails below. And if there's any topics that you'd like us to cover in the future, don't hesitate to forward those. So also, we just want to acknowledge the Big Tent as being one of the charities, activities, initiatives that we support. So you are also welcome to support the Big Tent, which plays a major role in the mental health and wellbeing of children experiencing trauma, abuse and neglect. And then join us. You're welcome to join us for the next session, which is on communicating what matters most and being prepared for life transitions. So thank you so much, Stephen, for today's conversation. Thank you for everybody who listened in today, and we look forward to having you join us again very soon. Thank you all. Bye-bye.